How far can you push someone before they finally walk away forever? What happens when your little test backfires so badly, the only thing waiting at home is a stack of legal documents and your life in shambles? Here's how my husband turned the tables after I humiliated him in front of everyone. I'm Lysandra Vane, and I thought I had it all figured out. At 32, I had a successful part-time event planning business, a reliable husband, and a comfortable life. But comfortable felt boring, predictable, safe in all the wrong ways. My husband Elliot was everything a woman should want on paper. At 35, he was a steady accountant who never missed a mortgage payment, always remembered anniversaries, and treated our 6-year-old daughter Mila like she hung the moon. But where was the excitement, the passion, the jealousy that proved he still wanted me? That's where my brilliant plan came in. "You're going to LA with Jasper." Elliot's voice carried that familiar note of concern as he looked up from his laptop at our kitchen table. His dark hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it, a habit he'd developed whenever work stressed him out. I kept my tone light, casual. "It's a work trip, honey. Jasper's band is playing at this huge corporate event, and they need someone to coordinate the logistics. It's a massive opportunity for my business." The lie rolled off my tongue so easily it surprised even me. Sure, Jasper Lynn was playing in LA, but this wasn't about work. This was about testing whether my husband still cared enough to fight for me. Elliot's jaw tightened slightly. "Since when do you work with your ex-boyfriend?" "Since I'm a professional who can separate business from personal history." I turned back to the dishes, letting a hint of irritation creep into my voice. "Besides, that was years ago. We're adults now. Lysandra, I just think what? That I can't handle myself? That I'm going to what? Fall into bed with him the moment we're alone?" I spun around, letting my voice rise just enough to sound offended. "God, Elliot, your insecurity is showing." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" I dried my hands on the dish towel, really warming up now. "You know what your problem is? You don't trust me. After 7 years of marriage, you still think so little of me that you can't handle me taking a business trip." "With your ex-boyfriend," he repeated quietly, "who is now a professional contact." I crossed my arms. "This is exactly why we have problems, Elliot. You're so paranoid and controlling that you can't see past your own jealousy." The words hit their mark. I watched his shoulders slump slightly, that familiar defeated look crossing his face. It was the same expression he got whenever his mother criticized him, or when our friends made jokes about how whipped he was. "I'm not trying to control you," he said finally. I have a bad feeling about this. Your bad feelings aren't my responsibility." I softened my tone just enough to sound reasonable rather than cruel. "Look, I know change is hard for you. You like everything predictable and safe, but I need this opportunity. My business needs this opportunity." He stared at his laptop screen for a long moment. "How long will you be gone?" 4 days. I'll be back Sunday night." "What about Mila's recital on Saturday?" "Damn, I'd forgotten about that." "You can handle one recital, can't you? You're her father." Another flinch. "Of course I can handle it. I just thought—" "Never mind." The next morning, I called my sister Rebecca from my tiny office above the flower shop downtown. She answered on the second ring, already laughing. "Please tell me you're actually going through with this," she said without preamble. "Hello to you too, Becca." I leaned back in my chair, grinning. And yes, I'm going through with it. Elliot's already acting all wounded and suspicious. Good. Maybe this will finally wake him up. God knows he needs a kick in the pants. Rebecca had never liked Elliot. She thought he was boring, too safe, too predictable. She'd been the one to suggest this whole plan in the first place, over wine and complaints about my mundane marriage. "You should see him moping around the house," I continued, "acting like I'm betraying him by taking a business trip." "Because he knows it's not really about business," Rebecca said with satisfaction. "Deep down, He knows Jasper could steal you away in a heartbeat if he wanted to. Exactly. And maybe when he realizes that, he'll start appreciating what he has. Or, Rebecca's voice took on a wicked tone, maybe you'll realize what you're missing. I laughed, but something fluttered in my stomach. It's not about Jasper. It's about making Elliot see that he can't take me for granted. Sure it is. When's the last time you felt butterflies about anything? When's the last time someone made you feel desired instead of just comfortable? I couldn't answer that, because the truth was uncomfortable. Elliot did make me feel safe and cared for, but when was the last time he made me feel electric? When was the last time he surprised me, challenged me, made my heart race? This will be good for our marriage, I said finally. Sometimes you have to shake things up to appreciate what you have. My best friend Carla was even more enthusiastic when I met her for lunch at our usual spot downtown. Oh my God, yes. She practically bounced in her seat. This is exactly what you need. Elliot has gotten way too comfortable. He needs to remember that you're a catch, not just his convenient wife and co-parent. That's what I'm thinking. A little healthy jealousy never hurt anyone. And Jasper. Carla fanned herself dramatically. Girl, that man is still fine as hell. Have you seen his Instagram lately? I had, actually. Jasper looked good. Really good. The years had been kind to him, adding just enough maturity to his boyish charm without dulling the edge that had drawn me to him in college. Where Elliot was steady and predictable, Jasper was spontaneous and magnetic. It's not about Jasper, I insisted, but Carla just smirked. Keep telling yourself that. But honey, there's nothing wrong with reminding yourself what it feels like to be wanted. Maybe Elliot will finally step up his game. That evening, I found Elliot in his home office, surrounded by tax documents and looking thoroughly miserable. Our daughter Mila was sprawled on the floor nearby, coloring in one of her princess books. Daddy looks sad, she announced without looking up from her crayons. Daddy's just tired, sweetie. I ruffled her hair before perching on the edge of Elliot's desk. Hey, I'm sorry about earlier. I know you're just looking out for me. He glanced up, hope flickering in his eyes. I am, I know, but you have to trust me, okay? This is important for my career. I do trust you, he said quietly. It's him I don't trust. Jasper's harmless. Besides, what's he going to do, sweep me off my feet in the middle of a corporate event? I laughed, making it sound ridiculous. You're my husband, Elliot. You're Mila's father. You're my life. The words were true, mostly, but they felt stale in my mouth, like reciting lines from a play I'd performed too many times. When do you leave? He asked. Thursday morning, early flight. He nodded, turning back to his computer. I'll drive you to the airport. You don't have to. I want to. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. There was a set to his jaw I didn't recognize, a stillness that seemed different from his usual quiet acceptance. Elliot, are you okay? I'm fine. He didn't look at me. Just want to make sure you get there safely. Thursday morning arrived with unusual tension. Elliot was quiet during the drive to the airport, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I chatted about the event, about Jasper's band, about the networking opportunities, but he just nodded at appropriate intervals. You have the hotel information? He asked as we pulled up to departures. Of course, I'll text you when I land. And you'll call Mila before bed? Every night. I leaned over to kiss his cheek. Stop worrying. I'll be back before you know it. He caught my hand as I pulled away. Lysandra. Yeah? I love you. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with something I couldn't quite identify. Not quite desperation, but close. I love you too, I said automatically, then grabbed my bag and headed into the terminal. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching me until I disappeared into the crowd. On the plane, I texted Jasper. Wheels up, see you soon. His response came immediately. Can't wait, beautiful. This is going to be fun. I stared at the message, my heart doing that fluttering thing Rebecca had mentioned. When was the last time Elliot had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd said anything was going to be fun? I turned off my phone and settled back in my seat, already imagining Elliot's face when I posted pictures from LA. A little jealousy would do him good. What I didn't know was that Elliot had already found the credit card statement I'd carelessly left on the kitchen counter. The one showing a hotel reservation that definitely wasn't paid for by any corporate client. Los Angeles hit me like a warm, intoxicating wave. The palm trees, the endless blue sky, the sense of possibility that seemed to shimmer in the air itself. This was what I'd been missing, trapped in our suburban routine of school pickups and grocery shopping and quiet dinners at home. Jasper met me at baggage claim, and I had to admit Rebecca was right. He looked incredible. His dark hair was artfully tousled. He'd filled out in all the right places. And when he smiled, I remembered exactly why I'd fallen for him in college. Lysandra Vane, he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. Still beautiful as ever. Jasper Lynn, I stepped back, grinning. Still a charmer. Guilty as charged. Come on, let's get out of here. I've got us set up at this amazing place in West Hollywood. The hotel was boutique luxury, all modern lines and expensive finishes. Nothing like the chain hotels Elliot preferred when we traveled, with their predictable layouts and continental breakfasts. 2 rooms? I asked as we approached the front desk. Of course, Jasper said, but his smile suggested he wasn't entirely committed to that arrangement. I'm a gentleman. My phone buzzed as we waited for the elevator. A text from Elliot. Did you land safely? I typed back quickly. Yes, just got to hotel. About to start working. Love you. It wasn't technically a lie. I was about to start working on my marriage, just not in the way Elliot thought. The husband checking in? Jasper asked, reading over my shoulder. He worries. Does he have reason to? I looked at him, at the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, at the easy confidence that radiated from him like heat. That depends on you, doesn't it? The first day was actually professional. Jasper's band was playing at a tech company's annual retreat, and I did coordinate some logistics, took some photos, networked with actual potential clients. But underneath the legitimate work was an electric undercurrent of possibility. We had dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, the kind of place Elliot would have called overpriced and pretentious. The wine was excellent, the conversation flowed like we hadn't spent years apart, and when Jasper reached across the table to touch my hand, I didn't pull away. I've missed this, he said softly. What? You. The way you light up when you're excited about something. The way you laugh with your whole body. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Jasper, I know you're married. I know you have a life back home. But tell me you don't feel this too. I did feel it. The spark, the electricity, the sense that anything could happen. It was intoxicating after years of predictability. It's complicated, I said finally. The best things usually are. That night, I posted a photo on Instagram, me and Jasper at the restaurant, my head thrown back in laughter, his hand visible on the table near mine. The caption read, "Working dinner in LA. Sometimes business trips are actually fun. Tibotcha blessed, ouch is working hard, darch LA life." I knew Elliot would see it. I knew exactly how it would look to him, and that knowledge sent a thrill through me that was part guilt, part excitement. My phone rang 20 minutes later. "Hi, honey," I answered, keeping my voice light. "How's the work going?" Elliot's voice was carefully neutral. "Great, really productive day. The event went well, and I made some good contacts. I saw your Instagram post." There it was. I could practically hear him trying to keep the jealousy out of his voice. "Oh, that. Yeah, we grabbed dinner to debrief about the event. Jasper knows all the best spots in LA. Looked like you were having fun." I was. It's nice to feel professional and competent, you know. Sometimes I forget I'm good at this stuff. A pause. "You're good at a lot of things, Lysandra." "I know you think that, but it's different when other people see it too. Another pause, longer this time. I should let you get some rest. Tell Mila I love her when you call her. Of course. Love you. Love you too. After I hung up, I felt a pang of something that might have been guilt. But then I remembered all the times Elliot had taken me for granted, all the times he'd chosen his routine over spontaneity, all the times he'd made me feel like I was asking for too much when I wanted something more than our quiet, predictable life. The second day, things shifted. The official work was done, but Jasper suggested we explore the city together. Research, he called it. You never know when you might have clients who want LA events. We drove up the coast in his convertible, the wind whipping through my hair, music pounding from the speakers. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. We walked on the beach, had lunch at a place where celebrities apparently ate, wandered through art galleries where the pieces cost more than my car. Remember when we used to talk about traveling the world together? Jasper asked as we sat on the sand, watching the sunset. We were kids then. We thought we could live on love and adventure. What's wrong with that? Nothing if you're 22 and have no responsibilities. And now, I thought about Mila, about the mortgage, about all the ways my life had become about other people's needs instead of my own wants. Now I know better. Do you? Or do you just tell yourself that because it's easier than admitting you settled? The word hit like a slap. I didn't settle. Didn't you? When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? When's the last time you felt truly alive? I couldn't answer because the truth was sitting right there between us. I felt more alive in 2 days with Jasper than I had in months at home. That evening, we went to a jazz club in Hollywood. The music was sultry and intimate, the lighting dim, the crowd sophisticated in a way that made me feel worldly and desirable. Jasper kept his hand on the small of my back as we navigated the crowd, and I leaned into his touch. "Dance with me," he murmured in my ear. On the small dance floor, pressed against him, I remembered what it felt like to be desired rather than just needed. His hands on my waist, his breath against my neck, the way he looked at me like I was the most fascinating woman in the room. "Lysandra," he whispered. "I know. Come back to my room." I should have said no. Should have remembered my husband, my daughter, my vows. But in that moment, with the music wrapping around us and Jasper's eyes burning into mine, I felt like I was drowning in possibility. "Yes," I breathed. What happened next was everything my marriage wasn't: passionate, desperate, electric. Jasper touched me like he'd been starving for me, looked at me like I was precious and wild and irresistible. For those hours, I wasn't a wife or a mother or someone who worried about mortgages and school forms. I was just a woman being worshipped by a man who couldn't get enough of her. Afterward, as I lay in his arms, I felt a complex mix of exhilaration and guilt. "No regrets?" Jasper asked softly. "I don't know yet." For what it's worth, you're even more incredible than I remembered. When had Elliot last said something like that to me? When had he last looked at me with naked want instead of comfortable affection? I slipped back to my room before dawn, my body still humming with satisfaction, and my mind already spinning the story I'd tell Elliot. Just a business trip, just networking, just harmless fun. But as I showered and got dressed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My eyes were brighter, my skin glowed, my whole posture was different. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly loved, and that truth was written all over me. I spent the last day taking photos around the city, carefully crafting social media posts that would suggest fun and freedom without crossing obvious lines. Jasper and I at the Getty Museum, captioned, "Inspiring art for future events." Us at lunch in Beverly Hills. Client meetings in beautiful settings. A selfie of just me at the hotel pool. Sometimes business trips have perks. Each post was calculated to make Elliot wonder, without giving him concrete evidence, the perfect balance of innocent and suggestive. On the plane home, I felt like I was returning from another world. The past 4 days had reminded me who I used to be, who I could still be if I chose. Jasper had texted me a dozen times already. Missing you. When can I see you again? This doesn't have to be the end. But as Los Angeles disappeared below the clouds, reality began to creep back in. I had a husband who loved me, a daughter who needed me, a life that was stable and secure, even if it wasn't thrilling. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of how it felt to be wanted so desperately. How it felt to be the kind of woman men wrote songs about instead of the kind they took for granted. Maybe this would be enough. Maybe the few days with Jasper had recharged something in me that would make my marriage better. Maybe Elliot would sense the change in me and step up his game. Or maybe this was just the beginning. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, but my mind kept drifting back to Jasper's hands on my skin and the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. By the time we landed, I'd almost convinced myself that what happened in LA was exactly what I'd needed. What I didn't know was that Elliot had spent the weekend putting together a very different picture of my trip, one that would soon turn my carefully planned test into a disaster I never saw coming. The house felt different when I walked through the front door Sunday night. Not obviously different, but there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere that I couldn't quite place. Elliot was in the kitchen, cleaning up from dinner, and he looked up when I entered with a smile that seemed perfectly normal. "Hey," he said, coming over to hug me. "How was your flight?" "Long but fine." I hugged him back, breathing in his familiar scent of laundry detergent and aftershave. After 4 days of Jasper's expensive cologne, Elliot smelled like home. "Where's Myla?" "Getting ready for bed. She's been asking about you all day." I felt a pang of guilt. "I'll go say goodnight." "She'd like that." Mila's face lit up when I appeared in her doorway. "Mommy, you're back." "I missed you so much, baby." I sat on her bed and pulled her into my arms, inhaling the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. This was real. This mattered. Whatever had happened in LA felt suddenly distant and complicated. "Did you bring me something?" "Of course I did." I pulled a small bag from my purse. "A snow globe from Hollywood." She shook it eagerly, watching the glitter swirl around the tiny palm trees. "It's beautiful. Tell me about your trip." I told her sanitized stories about the airplane, the hotel, the pretty buildings I'd seen. Safe stories that had nothing to do with jazz clubs and hotel rooms, and the way another man's hands had mapped my body like territory he was claiming. When I came back downstairs, Elliot was loading the dishwasher. "How did everything go here?" I asked, settling onto a bar stool. "Fine. Mila's recital was beautiful. She was disappointed you missed it, but she understood it was for work." Another guilt pang. "I'm sorry. I know how much those things mean to her." "It's okay. I recorded it for you." Of course he did. Elliot always thought of things like that, always tried to make sure I didn't miss out completely. "How was your trip really?" he asked, not looking at me as he wiped down the counter. "Productive, exhausting. You know how these things are." "Actually, I don't. You don't usually travel for work." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that this was new for you." "New can be good, Elliot. New can be growth." He nodded slowly. "Your Instagram post made it look like you were having fun." "I was. Is that a problem?" "Not at all. You looked radiant." The word hung in the air between us. Radiant. Not happy or relaxed, but radiant, like I was glowing from within. "The weather was beautiful," I said carefully. "California sunshine does wonders." "I'm sure it does." We went to bed that night like normal, but something felt off. Elliot was polite, attentive, but distant, like he was watching me from behind glass. When he kissed me goodnight, it felt perfunctory, rather than loving. The next few days passed in a strange kind of normalcy. I went back to work, fell into our usual routines, but I found myself thinking about LA constantly. Jasper texted me regularly. Nothing explicit, but warm and flirtatious. Missing your laugh. Saw a sunset today that reminded me of you. When can we talk? I didn't respond to most of them, but I didn't delete them either. They felt like a secret source of warmth, proof that somewhere out there was a man who found me irresistible. Wednesday evening, Elliot's mother, Helen, called to invite us to dinner on Friday. It was a monthly tradition, one I usually enjoyed, despite Helen's occasional passive-aggressive comments about my housekeeping or parenting choices. "She's making your favorite," Elliot said after hanging up. "That chicken thing with the lemon." Great. I was distracted, reading a text from Jasper about a song he'd written that reminded him of our time together. She mentioned that Rebecca and David will be there too, and the Johnsons. That got my attention. The Johnsons were our neighbors and close friends, part of our regular social circle. Why? I think she just wanted to make it a bigger gathering. Celebrate you being back from your big trip. Something cold settled in my stomach. Celebrate. She was excited to hear about your business success. Said she wants to hear all about LA. Friday night arrived with unseasonable warmth, and I dressed carefully in a new dress I'd bought in LA. Something more fitted and stylish than my usual suburban mom uniform. When we arrived at Helen's house, I could hear laughter and conversation spilling out from the backyard. "Lysandra!" Rebecca rushed over to hug me as soon as we walked through the gate. "You look amazing. LA obviously agreed with you." "Thanks, it was incredible." "I want to hear everything," she said, linking her arm through mine. "And I mean everything." The backyard was strung with lights, and Helen had outdone herself with the spread. Our friends were already there, Mike and Sarah Johnson, Tom and Jennifer Walsh, a few other couples from our neighborhood. Everyone seemed unusually excited to see me, like I was some kind of returning celebrity. "There she is," Mike Johnson called out, raising his beer. "Our little jet setter." "How was Hollywood?" Jennifer asked. "Did you see any movie stars?" I laughed, falling into the familiar rhythm of social conversation. "No movie stars, just a lot of work, but it was beautiful." "Work," Tom Walsh said with a knowing grin. "Is that what we're calling it?" Something in his tone made me pause. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on," Sarah Johnson chimed in. "We saw your Instagram posts. That didn't look like work to me." "Some work trips are more fun than others," I said carefully. "Especially when you're working with an ex-boyfriend," Rebecca added with a laugh. "God, I would kill for a work trip like that." The conversation continued around me, but I started to notice something strange. Everyone seemed to know more about my trip than they should have. Details I hadn't shared, assumptions that felt too specific. "Where's Elliot?" I asked, looking around. "Helping my mother in the kitchen," Helen's husband Samuel said. "You know how he is, always trying to be useful." The group laughed, but there was an edge to it I didn't like. "Poor Elliot," Jennifer said with mock sympathy. "Stuck at home with the kid while his wife lives it up in LA with her sexy ex." "It wasn't like that," I said quickly. "Oh, honey, we're not judging," Sarah assured me. "Good for you. Marriage doesn't have to be a death sentence." "Sometimes you need to remind your husband that you're still desirable," Rebecca added. "Keep them on their toes." The conversation was spiraling in a direction I hadn't intended. Yes, I'd wanted to make Elliot a little jealous, but I hadn't expected our friends to be quite so supportive of what they thought I'd done. "It really was mostly work," I insisted. "Sure it was," Mike said with a wink, "and I'm sure that ex of yours was a perfect gentleman." "Jasper Lynn," Tom said, pulling out his phone. "I looked him up after seeing your posts. Dude's a musician, right? Pretty good-looking guy." He turned his phone around, showing Jasper's Instagram profile. Several people crowded around to look. "Oh, wow," Jennifer breathed. "He's gorgeous. No wonder you looked so happy in those pictures." "I can see why you needed a little business trip," Sarah added with a laugh. That's when Elliot appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray of Helen's famous chicken. His face was carefully blank, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Hope everyone's hungry," he said with forced cheerfulness. "We were just talking about Lysandra's trip," Mike said. "Sounds like she had quite the adventure." "So I heard." Elliot set the tray down and took the empty seat next to me. His mother followed with sides, her expression disapproving in a way that made my skin crawl. "Well," Helen said as she settled into her chair, "I think it's wonderful that Lysandra is so independent." The word dripped with judgment. "Mum," Elliot said quietly. "What?" "I'm being supportive. It's very modern, isn't it? Wives taking trips with their ex-boyfriends." "It was a business trip," I said again, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Of course it was, dear." Helen's smile was razor-sharp. "I'm sure you were very professional." The dinner continued, but the mood had shifted. Our friends kept making comments that grew increasingly pointed. Rebecca kept encouraging me to share more details, and Helen kept making passive-aggressive remarks about modern marriage and commitment. Through it all, Elliot said almost nothing. He ate mechanically, responded politely when directly addressed, but mostly just sat there taking it all in. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "You know what?" I said, setting down my fork with more force than necessary. "Yes, I had fun in LA. Yes, I enjoyed spending time with someone who finds me interesting and exciting. Yes, it felt good to remember that I'm more than just a wife and mother." The table went quiet. "There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel alive," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "There's nothing wrong with wanting passion and excitement instead of just comfort and routine." "Lysandra," Elliot said softly. "What? It's true, isn't it? When's the last time you looked at me the way you used to? When's the last time we did anything spontaneous or exciting?" "You have a daughter," Helen said coldly. "Responsibilities." "I know I have a daughter, but I'm also a woman with my own needs and desires." "Which apparently include your ex-boyfriend," Helen shot back. "Maybe they do." The words came out louder than I'd intended. Maybe I needed to remember what it feels like to be wanted instead of just tolerated. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone stared at me, and I realized I'd gone too far. Way too far. Elliot stood up slowly. "I think we should go." "Elliot, I didn't mean, yes, you did." His voice was quiet but firm. "You meant every word." He walked into the house without another word. I sat there, faced with the shocked expressions of our friends and family, realizing that my carefully planned test had just blown up in my face. "Well," Rebecca said finally, "at least you're being honest." But as I looked around the table, I saw something I hadn't expected in their faces. Not support or understanding, but a kind of fascinated horror, like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. I followed Elliot into the house, but he was already getting Mila's jacket. "We're leaving," he said without looking at me. "Daddy, I'm not done with dessert," Mila protested. "We'll get ice cream on the way home." The ride home was silent except for Mila's chatter about the dinner and her excitement about ice cream. When we got home, Elliot took her straight upstairs for her bath and bedtime routine, leaving me alone in the kitchen with my thoughts and my growing sense of dread. I'd wanted to make him jealous, not humiliate him in front of our friends and family. I'd wanted him to fight for me, not shut down completely. But as I replayed the evening in my mind, I realized that's exactly what I'd done. I'd humiliated my husband, the father of my child, the man who'd never given me any reason to doubt his love, except that it wasn't exciting enough for me. When he finally came downstairs, his face was carefully composed. "Is Mila asleep?" I asked. "Yes." "Elliot, about tonight. I don't want to talk about it. But I need to explain." "Explain what? That you're in love with your ex-boyfriend, that our marriage is boring, that I'm not enough for you." His voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath. "I think you explained that pretty clearly." "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 7 years, and realized I didn't know how to answer that question. Because maybe it was what I meant. Maybe I had been trying to tell him he wasn't enough, that our life wasn't enough. "I'm going to bed," he said finally. "Elliot, please, can't we talk about this?" "What's left to talk about, Lysandra? You've made your feelings pretty clear." He walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the wreckage of my marriage scattered around me like broken glass. The next morning, Elliot was gone before I woke up. His side of the bed was cold, and when I went downstairs, there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Took Mila to school, working late tonight, leftovers in the fridge. No, love you. No, have a good day. Just the basic logistics of our shared life." I called in sick to work and spent the day replaying the dinner disaster in my mind. Every word I'd said sounded worse in memory. The look on Elliot's face when I'd basically admitted to having feelings for Jasper. The way our friends had stared at me like I was a stranger. By afternoon, I was desperate to fix things. I texted Elliot, "Can we please talk when you get home?" His response came an hour later. "Busy, maybe tomorrow." Maybe tomorrow, like I was a client requesting a meeting instead of his wife trying to save their marriage. I tried calling Rebecca, but she didn't answer. When I called Carla, she was sympathetic, but not particularly helpful. "Honey, you just told the truth," she said. "Maybe it came out wrong, but everything you said was valid. You do deserve passion. You do deserve excitement." "But I humiliated him, Carla. In front of everyone." "Sometimes the truth is humiliating. That doesn't make it less true." After we hung up, I felt worse instead of better. Was this really about truth, or had I just been cruel? Elliot came home after Mila was asleep, which I suspected was intentional. I was waiting in the living room with a glass of wine and an apology speech I'd been rehearsing all day. "Hi," I said as he walked through the front door. "Hi." He didn't sit down, just stood in the doorway like he was ready to flee. "I owe you an apology, a huge one." "Do you?" "Yes. What I said last night was inexcusable. I was defensive and angry, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way." He studied my face for a long moment. "Are you apologizing for how you said it, or for what you said?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you sorry you hurt me, or are you sorry you told the truth about how you feel?" I opened my mouth to say both, but the word stuck in my throat. Because the truth was complicated. I was sorry I'd hurt him, devastated that I'd humiliated him. But was I sorry about LA? Was I sorry about feeling alive and desired for the first time in years? "I'm sorry I hurt you," I said finally, "but not sorry about the rest of it." It wasn't a question. "Elliot, it's not that simple." Actually, it is that simple. He sat down across from me, but the distance between us felt like miles. "You went to LA with your ex-boyfriend. You had an affair. You came home and threw it in my face in front of our friends and family." "I didn't throw it in your face. Didn't you? All that talk about feeling alive and being wanted, about needing passion and excitement. What exactly did you think that sounded like?" I stared at him, realizing he was right. That's exactly what it had sounded like. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I said quietly. "But it did happen. The question is, what do we do now? We fix it. We work on our marriage. We remember why we fell in love in the first place." "Do we?" Because I'm starting to think the problem isn't that we forgot why we fell in love. I think the problem is that you fell out of love with the person I actually am. The words hit like a physical blow. "That's not true." "Isn't it? You want passion and excitement. You want spontaneity and adventure. You want to feel like you're 22 again, with no responsibilities and unlimited possibilities." He leaned forward. "But I'm not that guy, Lysandra. I never was that guy. I'm the guy who pays the mortgage on time and remembers to change the air filters and shows up to every one of Mila's school events. I'm reliable and steady and yes, probably boring." "You're not boring." Elliot didn't come home that night. or the next. When I called, he answered politely but distantly, like I was a casual acquaintance instead of his wife of 7 years. "How long will you stay at your parents'?" I asked during one stilted call. "I don't know yet. Mila keeps asking when you're coming home." "What did you tell her?" "That you're working on a big project, but she knows something's wrong." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before testing our marriage." The words stung because they were true. I'd pushed, tested, and now faced the possibility I'd failed spectacularly. By Thursday, desperation set in. Rebecca was distant. "Maybe you pushed too hard. You encouraged the trip." I said have fun, make him jealous, not have an affair and announce it at dinner. Even Carla pulled back, too busy for lunch. "This is a lot, Lysandra. Focus on fixing things with Elliot." I realized I was becoming a cautionary tale, the wife who cheated, humiliated her husband publicly. Jasper's texts continued, flirtatious then impatient. "You're being weird. I thought LA was special." "It was, but it's complicated. My marriage is falling apart." "Maybe that's not bad. Choose happiness over safe." The logic tempted but felt wrong. Was I truly unhappy or just bored? Had I broken my marriage, or was it already broken? Friday, Sarah Johnson cornered me at pickup, smile fake. "Heard Elliot's at his parents'. Difficult. I admire your honesty the other night. Saying what many think but won't." I wasn't trying to make a statement, yet that's how I'd be remembered, the woman brave enough to blow up her life for a fling. Saturday, Elliot arrived to pack. Tired, resolved, he'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. We sat, silence stretched. "We can't keep living like this," I said. "No, we can't." "So what now?" "You already know what you want. The question is whether you'll admit it." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've checked out for months. LA was the symptom." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When were you last happy here? With me?" No words came. He was right. "I love you," I whispered. "Do you? Or the security I provide?" "That's not—" "It is. I'm tired of being taken for granted. Tired of being the consolation prize." He packed, suitcase filling with our life. "I'm done pretending we're both happy." The door closed behind him. Alone, I stared at the empty space he'd left, finally understanding I'd destroyed the best thing in my life, steady love, for fleeting excitement. Jasper texted, "Thinking about you. When can we talk?" I replied, "Soon." If my marriage was over, at least I wouldn't face the wreckage alone. 3 days after the birthday dinner, Elliot asked me to meet at the house Tuesday afternoon. His text felt formal, final. "Can you be home at 3 p.m? We need to talk." Mila was at school. I took the afternoon off, hoping he wanted reconciliation. I'd spent 2 weeks in limbo, talking more to Jasper, missing Elliot's quiet routines, the safety he brought to our home. He arrived with Patricia Chen, his attorney. My stomach plummeted. "Lysandra, this is Patricia," he said calmly. "We have documents to review." "Divorce papers," Patricia confirmed, spreading them across the coffee table. The room tilted. "Divorce?" "I'm filing for dissolution," Elliot said. "I wanted to tell you myself." "We can fix this. You chose in LA. This is my choice." Patricia outlined terms: house sold, proceeds split, limited spousal support, joint legal custody, primary physical to Elliot. "You want to take Mila?" I whispered. "I want stability for her. You'll have every other weekend and Wednesdays, unsupervised after counseling and parenting classes." "How long have you planned this?" "Since my parents' dinner. I documented everything: LA trip, texts, dinner conversations, social media." "You spied?" "I protected myself and our daughter. Your phone's on our plan. You weren't discreet." Messages, photos, records lay exposed. "This isn't revenge," he said. "It's ensuring fair custody. Your judgment concerns me for Mila." "You bastard." "I'm sorry you see it that way, but she needs security." He stood. I'm staying at my parents'. Communicate through Patricia. The door closed softly. Alone, I stared at papers reducing 9 years to schedules and assets. Jasper texted, "San Francisco still on?" I replied, "No, I need to focus on my daughter." His answer, "Your loss." The fantasy collapsed, hollow, selfish. I'd tested Elliot's love, pushed until it broke. He'd responded with calm strength, protecting Mila while letting me face consequences. I'd wanted passion, excitement, proof I mattered. Instead, I lost my family for a weekend that cost everything real. The test ended. I failed. Elliot passed. Now I lived with the wreckage, small apartment, limited visits, regret that burned deeper than any thrill. 3 days after the birthday dinner, Elliot asked me to meet at the house Tuesday afternoon. His text was different, formal, final. "Can you be home at 3 p.m? We need to talk." Mila was at school. I'd taken the afternoon off, hoping he wanted to reconcile. I'd spent 2 weeks in limbo, talking more to Jasper, missing Elliot's quiet routines, the way he made our house feel safe. He arrived with Patricia Chen, his attorney. My stomach dropped. "Lysandra, this is Patricia," he said calmly. "We have documents to review." "Divorce papers," Patricia confirmed, spreading them on the coffee table. The room tilted. "Divorce?" "I'm filing," Elliot said, "for dissolution of marriage." "We can fix this." "You chose in LA," he said quietly. "This is my choice." Patricia outlined terms: house sold, proceeds split, limited spousal support, joint legal custody, but primary physical to Elliot. "You want to take Mila?" I whispered. "I want stability for her," he said. "You'll have every other weekend and Wednesdays, unsupervised after counseling and parenting classes." "How long have you planned this?" "Since my parents' dinner. I documented everything: LA trip, texts, social media, the announcement at dinner." "You spied?" "I protected myself and our daughter. Your phone's on our plan. You weren't discreet." Evidence lay exposed: messages, photos, credit card charges. "This isn't revenge," he said. "It's ensuring fair custody. Your judgment regarding boundaries concerns me for Mila." "You bastard." "I'm sorry you see it that way, but she needs security." He stood. "I'm staying at my parents'. Communicate through Patricia." The door closed softly. Alone, I stared at papers reducing 9 years to schedules and assets. Jasper texted, "San Francisco still on?" I replied, "No, I need to focus on my daughter." His answer, "Your loss." The fantasy collapsed, hollow, selfish. I'd tested Elliot's love, pushed until it broke. He'd responded with calm strength, protecting Mila while letting me face consequences. I'd wanted passion, excitement, proof I mattered. Instead, I lost my family for a weekend that cost everything real. The test ended, I failed, Elliot passed. Now I lived with the wreckage: small apartment, limited visits, regret that burned deeper than any thrill ever could.